Today is going to be a tiring day, everybody, because it's climbing day. Luckily not for you though, just for me, and I'm going to be checking out which technique is better, if you like, or more efficient, seated or standing when going up those hills. Now I know a lot of us, we all have our personal preferences between the two, and we might even mix it up. But which one is actually better? Which is more efficient and which is quicker, if you like? Well, armed with my trusty steed, today we are going to find out using various metrics, heart rate, power, all sorts, to really give you some numbers and break it down. But let's have a quick little look at both types of climbing first. Standing method first then. You're standing up out of the saddle, you've got your full body weight, putting as much power and pressure through the pedals as you can to really get the speed and the grip into the ground. Now, often considered a little bit more tiring because you essentially need more energy to hold your entire body weight up, also in your arms as well. But it can be sort of the most powerful way of climbing. But to sustain a good constant power for the whole time can be very, very tiring. Seated, on the other hand, more comfortable, easier, but you're almost relying entirely upon just your legs doing the work then. However, holding a nice average steady cadence and average power as well can be a lot easier. But which is better? Is there a preferred technique? Is one faster than the other? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is with a series of challenges that I've set myself today. Tests, if you like. Various types of climbs in both methods, so seated and standing, to see which is going to work out for the best, or like I said, is it going to be a mixture? And then we'll conclude at the end. But I need to get my climb on. So the first challenge. Okay, first challenge then, and it's something we come across all the time as mountain bikers. It's a straight up fire road climb. I've got about a 0.15 miles, so it's about 0.3-ish K climb ahead of me. It's got an average gradient of 13% and climbs about 60 meters or so. So it's nothing too grueling, but something that will just get the heart going and be long enough to notice a difference between the two. I've got my power meter hooked up, my heart rate hooked up. Suspension will stay unlocked on the old XC bike for the entirety of all the tests, and tyre pressures, well, I checked them this morning, but I'll make sure they're the same all the way through as well. So first up, I think we should do seated. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we got this. Oh, okay. First one in the books. That was tough, but manageable. It'll be interesting to see how climbing standing up all the way up there is going to compare, but it was certainly a good mixture of like the right length and gradient to make it a tough climb. If it had gone on for a lot longer, I think we'd have we could have hit the wall a little, but we'll do it standing. Let's go smash this. Okay, standing, so that dropper ain't going anywhere. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Pace myself a bit. That's hard work. I could really feel that towards the end. Ooh, that's my seat telling me, sit down, you crazy fool. Be interesting to see a comparison in the data between the two, but without delving too deep before we head back to the shed, the effort required on that second one standing was far greater, and I had a good rest in between. I didn't go straight into it, but yeah, like I said, the fatigue felt in the legs and the rest was tough. Oh yeah, next climb. It's challenge number 2 then, technical climbing time, and this one is going to be tricky because we got all sorts. First of all then, I have got these wet roots to contend with, strewn everywhere. After that, look at what we've got. After those routes, well then look down here. We've got these wet, polished rocks literally all over the trail. And we're not even done there yet. We've got more, let's keep going. The wet roots haven't got me, the wet rocks haven't got me, but then almost at the very finish here, we've got this stream crossing to go across. And then after that, it's this real filthy, muddy, almost step up of about 1.5 feet over these wet rocks. And we're very nearly at the finish. So that's all the obstacles, and it's going to be tough to call it. The stream is going to be a real tricky crossing right the way through to the finish here. And what's more, it actually gets pretty narrow in places as well. And the weather's coming in, it's raining. So to call this one seated or standing, I don't know. Oh wow, that is tricky doing that hang on. That is tricky doing that seated because you're just seat bouncing off all the little bumps. It's just really hard to keep traction. Even with the suspension unlocked, you can just feel it like skipping and your pedals skip a bit. I think standing could have the upper hand on that one, but then it's technical, so it's even harder to stand up for so long. So let's go do a standing run. Whew. Wow, okay. That's a big difference actually from being seated. I don't know about the numbers, like I said, we'll get to that at the end, but noticeably you can move your body weight around. So when you're going over all these bumps, you can shift it left to right, back and forth, so you've always got the best grip and the best body position. But numbers don't lie, so it's going to be interesting to see actually which was quicker. Average powers, heart rates, all that gubbins again. But we've got a third and final challenge to get to, so let's go to it. Whew. Whew. Okay, it's challenge number 3 time, or test if you like. Now this is a little bit different to the other two. This isn't an all-out hoonigan of a sprint to the top. This one's actually a matched power, so almost the more fairer of the 3 tests. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to set off up this climb behind me. It's on a fire road, nice and smooth, so we can try and keep the cadence and sort of the body movements and everything as controlled as possible. I'm going to try and do each one seated and standing, but matched power. I'm going to aim to keep it at roughly 350 watts for both seated and climbing, sort of a good average number. The climb itself is probably about 1 minute and 10 long, so it's not a huge monster of a climb by any means, but it's something long enough to get a good feel for it on. Also, it's about 0.3K, so distance-wise is okay. XC bike's primed and ready, suspension's unlocked, seats up, let's go. Okay, here we go then. Seated, matched power, run numero uno. Louis on the camera. Oh, Leo. Oh, wow, where did that come from? Seated, matched power, climb, run number 1. Leo on the camera. We ready, Leo? Yep. 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Woo. Okay. First lap seated done. I ain't gonna tell you the numbers just yet, but it felt achievable to keep a good steady pace sitting down, that's for sure. I mean, the numbers aren't gonna lie, but like for the average pace to keep it steady the whole way seated, I think I might get that. But I'm gonna drop in now, back good again, And we'll do it standing. 350 watts, no problem. Run number 2, matched power, standing. Leo Louis on the camsies. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Come on. Oh, wowzers. Okay, that is trickier. Instantly noticeable. It's harder to look down and sort of gauge how you're doing. You almost have to go off perceived effort instead of looking directly at the numbers on the computer, because you start either pounding the pedals harder or getting a wobble on or something. So, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to compare the numbers, but I'm pooped. I've been climbing hills all day. I think we should get back to the dirt shed and delve into what this Garmin is going to tell me I've been doing all day. Let's go. Well, I'm finally back, thawed out, dried off and mud free, but we got a ton of numbers to crunch through today from all 3 of our different tests. And I think we should kick things off with the old fire row test. Now, this seated took 1:06, whereas standing was 1 minute flat. My average heart rate for, again, seated was 144, whereas for standing it was 160, so actually a fair bit higher. Average power, seated 452, standing 524, so a much higher average power as well. And the average speeds were seated again 7.3 to 7.9 when standing. Now, what we can take from that actually is that although the standing was clearly quicker and the average power was quicker, from an actual feel point of view, towards the end, the legs were on fire. It's just not sustainable. All right, you maybe lose a little time while seated doing it, but those power numbers and that sort of effort, if you like, 160 compared to 144 is a huge difference over that short period of time. So if you were to multiply that over a far longer climb, standing just would not be a sustainable way of doing it. Maybe for a short, sharp sprint of it, but overall, when you take into the factor of cadence and consistency, seated is definitely the winner on that one, even though it actually wasn't even the fastest. Right then, it's technical climbing time, and the numbers here were actually a little bit closer. So seated time was 1:41, whereas standing was 1:37. So again, standing just taking top honors and winning that little part of the duel, if you like. Average heart rate 139 compared to 141, so virtually nothing in it there. You know, the effort there was nigh on the same. Maximum heart rates on both of them came to about a 166 as well, so actually both peaking at around the same thing. Average power was 380 seated compared to 408 standing, and average speed was 7.5 compared to 8.3. Obviously the average power, the average speeds were slightly higher because the time of the standing was quicker. Interestingly here, because we were on a technical climb, it was actually much more difficult while seated to hold a steady cadence and steady speed, because when you hit the bumps, your back end would jump and skip around. And this actually became really apparent at the end of the climb when I had almost like a foot step to get up. I tried to stay seated, but you kind of couldn't, because you just couldn't keep the power or move your body to get over the bump. So you almost ended up seat bouncing over it. Now, when climbing up that same climb standing, although you could get up out the pedals, really shift your body weight around and get the power down, which is why the average power was higher, when you had those sort of parts in between, which were a bit smoother where you wanted to take a seat, you could really feel, again, the legs burning. So once again, I think the standing was much better for a technical climb. So if you're faced with a mixture of both, say, you would definitely mix the two standards together, so seated and standing, to make it easier for yourself. But you just couldn't, again, sustain climbing standing up for a long period of time, unless you're maybe Nino Schurter or something. Our third and final test for the day then was this one, the matched power test. Now, interestingly, this is where things got flipped around a little bit. So it wasn't just an all-out sprint like the other two to see which was quickest up the hill, but actually trying to get up the hill, almost holding the same effort between the two different styles. Timing-wise then, seated was a 108 versus standing at a 112. The first time that seated has taken the win here. Time-wise, average heart rate was 142 compared to 149. Average power was 346 seated, so slightly below that 350 mark that we were aiming for. Standing was 356, so again, slightly higher wattage there than our 350 target, but not a great deal in it. And average speed was 8.7 compared to 8.3, as you would again expect with a slightly quicker time. Now, what's really interesting here then is that maintaining, if you like, a good cadence and that good average speed was far more achievable seated on this fire road climb. And the climb did lend itself to that. Obviously, these technical climbs, they're very hard to keep smooth, and also, you know, look at your head unit and see what you're doing. If that's what you're needing to do, if you're not going by feel through the pedals. Whereas the standing, as once you start getting tired towards the end of the climb, you're mashing on the pedals, so power was fluctuating, and it also saw that heart rate start to go up ever so slightly as well, which is why it's a higher average heart rate. Again, a fairly short climb, obviously just over a minute long. So if you were to do that over a 2, 3, 4 minute climb, say if you're in an XC race, well, then I could only imagine those numbers sort of growing in size, if you like. You just wouldn't be able to sustain that kind of power for that amount of time standing up without burning out. Seated was just a lot more comfortable, it was a lot easier to regulate, so it's definitely more applicable in this situation. But there are some other great things anyway. So then, to conclude, well, seated versus standing, which is it to be? Well, I think we can basically say from this that both have their applications depending upon the climb. If you're on a big long slog of a climb, then seated is definitely going to be the one for you. If you're faced with something far more technical where you need to move your body weight around and get up out the saddle, then standing up is the way. And obviously mixing the two together to get up whatever climbs in front of you is always going to work well as well. But that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope this has sort of helped the next time you're out crushing those hills. Can't wait to see what you think. Let us know in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Happy riding, everybody.